to, Autodesk and then kind of creative market. Could you share a little bit more about, what you were working on then and maybe some of the kind of initial product challenges?
Yeah, it's a good question. So early on, I was kind of brought in, again, like employee 14, so wearing multiple hats, but I was brought in to be both a growth PM and an analyst. So at that point in time, they didn't have a concept of a product team or even a PM, nor did they have an analytics person or team. And so I really helped kind of stand up a lot of that infrastructure there. And by kind of understanding, setting up a lot of the infrastructure, I help kind of better understand kind of marketplace dynamics. And so Creative Market, if folks aren't familiar with the site, is a marketplace for design assets. So think of like design ingredients, things like fonts, 3D models used in animation gaming, templates, graphics, stock photos is kind of the legacy category that a lot of people know about within the stock space. And at Creative Market, we had to start 5 high-level categories, and then we eventually expanded to 7 high-level categories. And within those categories, there are sometimes dozens of subcategories. And so some of the early work that I was doing was just to kind of set up really foundational metrics, trying to better understand things like user retention. Again, the team was quite young. We didn't have a good understanding there, so established that. Then started to try to understand the inputs of user retention. So how many people are actually hitting what is known as like the aha moment, how many people are building a habit around that. So we established that for both sides of the marketplace, similar to like the Facebook 7 friends in 10 days, and started working against that. And then started to better understand the nuances across categories and kind of the more or less the liquidity needed within each category. So what I mean by that is if you take a category like fonts, we probably, when I started, had a catalog of about 5,000 products. And that actually was pretty sufficient to create a match so that most buyers could actually find what they were looking for. But there's other categories where the needs of the buyer were much different. So if you take a category like stock photos, oftentimes when a freelancer, designer, solopreneur is looking for something like a stock photo, they have a pretty particular idea of what they want in mind. It can be as specific as the St. Bernard running along the lakeside at high noon with plenty of white space and all that. And as a result, what we started to understand was that we needed a much deeper catalog in those areas. And so we started treating more or less each one of the categories, in some cases subcategories, as almost unique marketplaces, and kind of measured things like match rate and conversion rate, and buyer or transaction to catalog depth ratio. So that's some of the stuff I was working on a high level. I'll quickly just kind of touch on some of the future stuff and we can go in there if it makes sense. But kind of moving forward, I ended up overseeing kind of the entire growth and marketing team. So growth being kind of product-driven growth, a lot of experiment and optimization, kind of focused on a lot of the early findings that we had within kind of my first year as I got things established. And then marketing was all things top of funnel. So think SEO, we built out a homegrown affiliate program, did some paid acquisition, et cetera. And then eventually oversaw everything from design and research to product, as well as growth and analytics.